all the temperature involved in the thermal calculations must be in absolute temperature. So you have to be careful to convert all temperature into Kelvin scale. And then you calculate the number of moles that should be available inside the tube. The tube volume should be same. The question says the air in a car tire has a constant value of this one. So you have to assume that the volume of the internal volume of the tire is same. So use the same volume, calculate PV equals to nRT, and then you just divide and you get the number of strokes. Now, important bit, how should we circumvent the problem with the fraction value of this quotient that I'm going to discuss. This was question number 16 or 19, 515. So we go for that. So have a look. Here we get the number of strokes is 0.505, 0.012. This is 42. What is the actual answer of this thing? I mean, by using the non-rounded values of this number, someone give me the non-rounded answer of this one.
Sir, 41.48.
So it was 41.48. Okay, so that's the point that I'd like to discuss. The actual number of strokes came out to be 41.48. Now here's the deal. If you numerically round this up, this answer is supposed to be 41. But for the number of strokes to get to that pressure and temperature, you cannot use 41, because if you use 41, then you cannot achieve this pressure and temperature. So it says that what is the number of strokes that the pump requires to increase the pressure to this much level, which means we have to achieve that pressure. If we apply only 41 strokes, then we are gonna get close to that pressure or close to the temperature, but we wouldn't be achieved to get that exact value, either in pressure terms or in temperature terms. Now, if we actually give the entire 42 strokes all the way, our value would be somewhat above that value. But that would essentially mean that we have reached to the requirement that we are looking for. The pressure might be somewhat higher.
Requirement কম হওয়া যাবে না আসলে।
Requirement is কম হওয়া যাবে না, exactly. That's the important bit that I need you to understand. So that was the rounding off problem that the kids usually go through here. So it cannot be rounded up to 41. It has to be rounded up to 40. The next integer it has to be rounded to. Have a look at the mark scheme. Have a look at the exam over here. In the majority of calculations, the amount of gas for at the new pressure was calculated correctly. However, a significant minority used the expression PV by T equals to constant, as thus assuming no change in the amount of gas, which is wrong. Having determined the new amount of gas, many failed to calculate the change in the amount before finding the number of strokes. What? Many failed to calculate the change in the amount before finding the number of strokes. Oh, acha. So what they're saying is that, I mean, you are going to calculate from this set of information what would be the total number of mole inside the tire for the new scenario. You're going to be able to calculate that, but that is not your answer. The question says how many strokes would be required to do this. So the tire was initially filled up with certain number of mole of gas already. Now you want to give some additional mole number into the tire. So you have to subtract exactly how many moles do you want to insert into the tire by the pumping mechanism. So once you subtract, you find out how many moles should enter into the tank, and then you have to divide that number of moles that you are trying to enter, not the original number, not the final number, the difference of those two numbers, that has to be divided by 0.012. Yeah, I understand. So if you forget to do the subtraction, then you're going to also mess up the calculation. So you're going to lose you're going to get the first 2 marks, but you're not going to get the 3rd mark. Try to understand. Already the tire is filled up with a certain amount of gas that we can calculate from here. Now we want to insert a new number of moles. The question is how many number of strokes required to increase the pressure to this much from this state, right? So let's say you calculate out the actual mole number over here. Let's say that mole number was calculated to be how much? Original mole number was 3.73 mole. The new mole number should be 4.23 mole. Now you're not going to insert the entire 4.23 mole using the pumping. You're gonna insert the difference of these 2 mole number in the pumping process. See what I mean? So এই সাবট্রাকশনটা যদি কেউ করতে ভুলে যায়, ডিরেক্টলি এটাকে যদি 0.012 তে ভুল করে, তাহলে তাহলে 2 মার্ক পাবে না। আমি 1 মার্ক বলছিলাম, 2 মার্ক পাবে না। এটাও পাবে না, ওইটাও পাবে না, কারণ এটাও ভুল আসবে, ওইটাও ভুল আসবে। So being able to use this formula to calculate the new mole number is 1 mark. Then that to be able to perceive the idea that you have to calculate the change of mole numbers through the subtraction, that concept gives you 1 mark, and then the actual answer, number of strokes, and the must round it up to the next integer, that gives you the last mark. Make sense, everyone? All right. 16, anyone, any problem with the 16?
Sir, A3 and C.
আচ্ছা, A3 তে বলছে হচ্ছে the amount of 1 mole of helium-4 gas is contained in a cylinder at a pressure of this many pascal and temperature of this much. Calculate the volume of the gas cylinder, hence show the average pressure of the gas in the cylinder is approximately.
Sir, A2. Not
আচ্ছা, বলতেছি, to find out the average separation, we need to find out what is the individual volume, average individual volume available to each particle. So that would mean that, let's say, the entire internal volume of the gas is something which we could calculate over here, and using the mole information which you are already given. Do we have the mole information here? Yeah, 1 mole, exactly 1 mole gas. So using the 1 mole gas, the number of particle, total number of particle would be the equal to the Avogadro's constant, which is 6.02 into 10 to the power 23. So if you divide that volume by that number, you're going to be able to calculate what is the average volume occupied by each individual gas molecule. The separation is going to be cube root of that number, because you can assume that the particles are spaced out in cubic form. So each individual particle has a certain cubicle of space around them, and you can stack up all of those individual cubicle of spaces to cover the entire internal volume of the container. So if you find out the cube root of that thing, you're going to find out the side length of those cube, which is basically the separation.
Sir, so we are assuming that the particles are shaped like a cube.
No, we're assuming that the volume of space occupied by the particles are shaped like the cube. Particles can be of zero volume, which is located at the center of that cube.
Okay, sir.
Something like this. Let's say if you assume that there are sondesh stacked one to each other, and at the center of each of the sondesh there is a gumer buri. So something like that. বুঝা গেছে?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, this would give us a really low separation. Wouldn't that mean there is potential energy?
How much separation do you get?
3.4 into 10 to the power minus 9. It's pretty low.
$140 picometer means how much?
140 into 10 to the power minus 12. Oh, okay, sir, I got it. Thank you.
Sure. বুঝা গেছে?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it's small, but in sense of comparison, it's big, really big. So B, calculate the gravitational force between two helium-4 atoms that are separated by distance of this much, which is the gravitational formula. Then we either asked us to do the calculate ratio of these two forces. We're gonna get a ratio. Now, what it says over here, the weight of one helium-4 atom is gonna be on the top, and the gravitational force between two helium atoms is gonna be at the bottom. How much did you get this ratio value?
Sir, 2.6 into 10 to the power 20.
Okay, so it means that the pool of
2.6 into 10 to the power 20.
Yes, so we can see that the magnitude of the ratio of these two forces, weight of the helium atom is significantly large compared to the in between gravitational force. So it says comment on your answer to B2 with reference to one of the assumptions of the kinetic theory of gases. So what they are trying to show us that the gravitational force that exists between the particles is significantly smaller. I can say like infinitesimally smaller. For example, 2.6 to the 20 is a really large ratio value compared to the other force that is by default involved in a scenario. I mean, if you have a gas molecules that is entrapped within a container that is located on our surface, you cannot deny the existence of weight. As long as you consider those particles to have mass, which is definitely a value, we can hypothetically consider the particles to have zero volume, provided the intermolecular spacing is significantly large compared to the diameter. That works for some approximation, but you cannot consider the gas to have zero mass. That usually is not a good idea because objects cannot have zero mass. So the consider each individual gas molecule, each individual gas atom is helium, so I should say atom. Considering that each individual gas atom has some mass, there will be some weight involved. There will be some weight involved, and what you can see that weight is largely superior compared to the in-between in-between gravitational force. So the assumption that I think that is relevant over here, just my hunch, is that one of the assumption in the for the ideal gas assumption or ideal gas assumption is that the potential energy for each of the ideal gas particle is zero, or in other words, we can say that the particles do not exert any force onto each other except for when they are in collision. Which means that they don't have any significant force between each other, which can be somewhat, what can I say, justified by observing this ratio, that the usual force that each of the gas particle would be experiencing, because we're talking about helium atom, and helium is never going to be ionized, so the question of electrostatic forces is not possible. So we can only talk about only gravitational force, which is a default outcome of mass. So what we can find out is that what I can say, that the other force which is involved for each of the gas particle, which is the weight of each of the gas particle, is extremely large compared to the in-between force between them. So the assumption that the particles do not exert on any force onto each other is actually practically correct. So we are doing basically a comparison between the weight force and the intermolecular force by virtue of gravitation. So that can be a logical explanation. I'm not quite sure, but I'm going to look at the mark scheme because I can. This was number 16.
স্যার এই অ্যাটম দুইটার মাঝখানের যে গ্র্যাভিটেশনাল ফোর্সটা, এটাই কি ওই পটেনশিয়াল এনার্জিটার জন্য রেসপন্সিবল?
Well, শুধু এটা না, to be honest, potential energy between two particles is possible as long as those two particles have some sort of force in between them. Though that force can come into existence from gravitational force, that force can be possible from electrostatic attraction force. It is possible from some sort of elastic forces. To be honest, if I go to the bottom of the whole idea, there are basically 4 different expressions of force: gravitational force, electromagnetic force, and then weak nuclear force and strong nuclear force. These are the 4 unique variation of forces. So any two objects which are bonded by any of these two force, by any of these force, and now I mean two particles bonded by one force, what do I mean by this? I mean Newton's third law, because if particle A exert a gravitational force on particle B by Newton's third law, particle B will also exert an equal and opposite gravitational force onto particle A. The two forces has to be of same type. So any two particles which are bonded by any of these forces, they are going to have a potential energy stored within themselves by the effect of that force. But if two particles do not exert any force on each other, they are not going to have any potential energy within themselves. So the point that we're trying to highlight here, that since the force between the particles is so small / negligible, so there exists no potential energy for the ideal gas particle, or in other words, that entire energy content in a ideal gas is entirely kinetic. বুঝতে পারছি?
ইয়েস স্যার।
ওকে, শুরু কিছু বলতে নিছিলা?
স্যার মানে স্যার if the force is something else than gravitational, তাহলে আসলে মানে কি প্রবলেম আসলে? Why can we consider it?
না, কনসিডার করছো তো। The third example of the comment, if there are forces, they are not gravitational force, because the gravitational force is extremely weak. I mean, if you have to have the effect on the gas particles by virtue of some other force, it has to have some significant value that is somewhat comparable to the weight. I mean, if it is not comparable, then weight is gonna overpower the visible effect or the measurable effect of any other force.
আচ্ছা, সো অ্যাটমের ভেতরের ফোর্সগুলো গ্র্যাভিটেশনাল আমরা নিচ্ছি না, আদারওয়াইজ
আমরা এক্সাম্পল রিপোর্ট একটু দেখি। Answers tended to lack clarity so that it was not possible to determine whether a statement written by candidate was meant to be a comment of an answer calculated in B2 or a reference to one of the assumptions of the candidate theory of gases. Okay, so what they are meaning over here is that the students either randomly wrote some assumption. I mean, they could not make the link between the assumption that they mentioned and how this B2 calculation value are linked. So they might have written a random assumption, or they might have just quoted that value and moved on. How these two aspect, the answer of B2, that big ratio value, and the assumption of the ideal gas that they mentioned, they are not properly linked together. So that's what this means. Yeah, pretty much makes sense. 17. I believe 17 number alap korchilam age. Heh, alap korchilam. I didn't go through the calculation, but I did talk about the aspect of this question. Do you have any problem? Asadul একটা question লিখছো. Sir, what does to make allowance mean in the mark scheme for the answer of 17B1? Okay. 17B, okay, this is the question. I know the question. So I believe it. Said what it was said, why the mass of water determined with the heater switched off? Acha. Whenever we have kept the heater switched off, some water would still be melting by absorbing heat energy from the surrounding. We wanted to measure exactly how much ice is melted by the heat absorbed from the surrounding. That's what it means by to make allowance for. I mean, we are trying to measure out the error over here. This first row is actually measuring the error that will be induced into our introduced into our experiment because of the atmospheric heating. So that's what they mean by the word to make allowance for, which means to incorporate the calculation for that error, or in other words, to get rid of the error, we have to make observation relevant to that error so that we could get rid of it. Make allowance for means to take care of it. বুঝে গেছে?
স্যার কম্পেনসেটিং ফর হিট লস তো বলা যায় এখানে, রাইট?
না, হিট লস বলা যাবে না, হিট গেইন বলতে হবে।
হিট গেইন, স্যার আরেক জায়গায় দেখছিলাম হিট লসের ব্যাপারে ছিল।
Shubhra, you need to consider what is the temperature of your experimental environment and what is the ambient temperature. What is the experimental temperature over here?
The experimental temperature is 0 degrees centigrade, I guess.
What is the ambient temperature?
The surrounding temperature 20 degrees centigrade or
25 RTP. Okay, typical. So which is cold, which is hot?
Okay, the ambient is hot.
So now you got your answer.
Yeah. মানে হিট গেইন করতেছে এখানে যে
Exactly. So তোমার যদি টেম্পারেচার তোমার এক্সপেরিমেন্টাল মানে অ্যাপারেটাস সেটআপের টেম্পারেচার যদি অ্যাম্বিয়েন্টে বেশি হয় তখন হিট লস হবে। সো ওই ওয়ার্ডটা খুব মানে কেয়ারফুলি চুজ করতে হবে সো দ্যাট ইউ ডু নট মেস আপ ইওর আনসার। ঠিক আছে? বলবান এখানে একটা জিনিস দেখো, এখানে কিছু ক্রস দেওয়া না? Did you guys ever see that? Do you see 3 crosses here?
তো এটা আইসকে ব্লক করে রাখার জন্য, রাইট?
So ওই জিনিস অ্যাকচুয়ালি কি?
So
It's net.
It's a small mesh net, exactly,
Yeah.
so that the crushed ice would not fall out of that thing in their small fragments, so that we do not get unmelt ice over here, because we're going to measure the mass of the melt water that will be captured in the beaker. So we do not want unmelt ice over here. To prevent that, we give a very fine mesh net over here. So you have to understand that as the ice is going to keep on melting, their size is going to become smaller and smaller and smaller. So if you do not give this mesh, it is possible that some ice block which is at the bottom, which could become so small to pass through the tube, they're going to come out unmelt. Now, if it doesn't melt, then that would mean that you are not being able to take it into your calculation properly, because you are expecting the ice to melt within this environment and the liquid water to pour out over here. That's what you are going for. Yes, Sajid, bolo.
স্যার ফিল্টার পেপার দিলে হবে না?
হ্যাঁ, ফিল্টার পেপার দিলেও হবে, কোনো সমস্যা নাই। মানে আমি এখানে ক্রসগুলো দিয়ে কি মিন করছি সেটা বোঝা যাচ্ছে না। হ্যাঁ, ফিল্টার পেপার দিলে হবে। ফিল্টার পেপার ইজ অলসো ইকুয়ালি অ্যাকসেপ্টেবল। ওকে, 18
স্যার B2
B
18 এর B2
B1
আচ্ছা,
স্যার 17B3 টা লাগতো। 17B3 তে আচ্ছা স্পেসিফিক ল্যাটিন গ্রুপ ফিশন
বলো কি বুঝো নাই?
আচ্ছা
18
স্যার উপরের একটু কোশ্চেনটা দেখি তো। there was some problem স্যার, এখানে রিলেট করতে পারছিলাম না। স্যার এখানে আমরা আসলে ম্যাথ কতটুকু নিব আসলে 64.7 minus 16.6
না,
or we will return
64.7 minus 8.3.
so why 8.3?
Have a look at the fourth column. I'm
time interval
How much time do you see for the true reading? Same.
5 minutes আচ্ছা একটা 10 minutes একটা 5 minutes,
So
it becomes half.
exactly.
আচ্ছা ঠিক
বুঝা
আছে
গেছে?
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
Shabash. So 18, an ideal gas occupies a container of volume this much at a pressure of this much at a temperature of this much with the number of atoms of the gas container is this much. আচ্ছা এটা তো পারা পসিবল। মোল নাম্বার বের করতে atoms of a real gas each have a diameter of this much. Estimate the volume occupied by this many atoms of this gas. আচ্ছা এখানে বলছে হচ্ছে estimate the volume occupied by this many atoms of this gas, which means they are asking you to calculate the exact volume occupied those gas molecules only, apart from their intermolecular space, which means if you could stack up those molecules touching each other's body, or in other words I can say if that gas became liquid, what would be the volume of that liquid? This is that information. So you can find out the what you can consider them as spheres, because they have used the word diameter. So you can find out the individual volume of each gas molecule, multiply it by that, and you get this number. No big deal. Then the question says that by
Sir.
reference to your answer in one, একটু শেষ করি আমি কোশ্চেন নিচ্ছি, don't worry. একটু শেষ করে নি, the by reference to your answer in one suggests whether the real gas does approximate to an ideal gas. Well, the concept that we're going to cover for this question is that we're going to find out this volume to be extremely small compared to the internal volume of the container. So the aspect that this calculation represent for the assumption of the ideal gas is that we consider that the particles occupy negligible volume inside the container, or in other words you can say that the entire internal volume of the container is available for the particles to move around, which means in other words that the particles don't have any volume of their own. You can be expressed in two different type of wording, which is practically a logical thing, because we can see that, I mean, although the volume of the gas particles are not entirely exactly zero, আচ্ছা এটা বলতেছে মুগ্ধ তোমার কোশ্চেন আনসার বলতেছি। I mean, you can essentially consider them to be perfectly zero, but you can pretty much consider the fact that it is possible for us to consider the volume of the occupied gas volume is practically zero, because this volume is extremely small compared to the container volume. Achha, one of your classmates answers that, Polaman, chat window spam kora bondo koro. If you have relevant question koro. If you have to chat with someone else, send them a personal message. Take your discussions elsewhere, which is not relevant to physics, please. I appreciate that. সেটা হচ্ছে আমাদের মার্ক স্কিমে কিউবের জন্য অ্যালাউ করছে, আবার স্ফিয়ার দিয়ে করলেও মার্ক দিচ্ছে। স্ফিয়ার দিয়ে মার্ক দিলে মার্ক করার কারণ, স্ফিয়ার দিয়ে করলে মার্ক দেওয়ার কারণ হচ্ছে that we are gonna with the question essentially gives you the word diameter, so it is a natural response that you should be using the formula for a sphere and eventually go for this calculation. But that is not actually pragmatic, because whenever you consider the sphere which will be stacked onto each other, let's say if I consider the structure for a sodium chloride thing, I mean, let's forget about sodium chloride. Let's say if I consider two spheres which are placed side by side, they should not be, I mean, on one of the sphere is not going to stack up or melt down to cover the entire volume. They're going to be stacked one after another in this fashion. Or even if you want to go for a much optimized version, I mean, this can happen, and then you can oops, no, I don't want that. Then we can have this much, and then we can have this much, and it can go forward further down. So this is the idea. So if you consider, I love airplane mode. So if you consider that the gas molecules are actually stacked onto each other to give us a continuous volume, although you can see they are spherical in shape, you cannot necessarily fill up this gap. That's one logical way that why cubic shape would be applicable considering the diameter as the space, because I mean those in between volumes are going to be pretty much empty. Another assumption, if you go for a better optimization, that can happen if I, let's say, take one row of this thing. Can I copy one row? I think yes. Let's say if I take one row of this thing, and then let's say if I try to stack them up with this gap in between, let's say if I try to stack them up like that, so you might be able to cover some of that volume, but going forward to calculate the volume in this manner is going to take you some whole lot of geometric masquerade, which is not essential for our physics calculation over here. So they totally disregarded this structure format, but they assume that if you consider the structure in this format, you are not going to be able to get the exact in volume over here. This volume is still going to be empty. So considering that each of the cube basically covers a perfect so each of the spherical atom covers a perfect cubic shape is actually not so impractical. So that's why they also appreciated the idea of cubic volume. Vidarsi, Mugdho.
Yes, sir. কিন্তু স্যার ওরা তো মানে they are further apart from each other. ওরা তো stack করে থাকে না।
No. What they are trying to tell us is that, I mean, quotient a component of bullshit. They are saying that atoms of real gas each have a diameter of this much. Estimate the volume occupied by this many atoms of this gas. So what is the exact volume occupied by this many atoms of the gas, not the total gas itself? So what is
we are considering it's in a closed space.
Not closed space. We are considering the exact volume occupied by each of the gas molecule and summing up that volume. So what is the exact volume of those molecules only, not for the entire gas that it is spread upon.
Okay, sir, got it. Thank you, sir.
বুঝে গেছে?
Yes, sir.
স্যার আমাকে আবার একটু বুঝাবেন ওই পার্টটা, ওই যে আপনি যে দুইটা ফিগার আঁকলেন না, দুইটা ফিগারের পার্টটা আবার কিউবিকটা কিভাবে কেন আসছে এটা বুঝতেছি না।
This is a two-dimensional view. If you stack up these molecules one by one, you're still going to have this much space left, right?
Yes, sir.
So let's say I'm going to mark all of these atoms as yellow. So have a look. We are having this much space left. So we cannot essentially calculate how much we actually can calculate how much this space this is without geometric knowledge. But if we disregard to consider this space is actually available to us, because this is not the space where the particle can move around. This is a stuck place. I mean, this sphere cannot get into this place, can it? The amount of space that you have over here, can another particle enter into this location? Now that answer is a no, which means practically you can stack up these particles in this manner. So if you stack up the particles in this manner, consider trying to calculate the entire volume of the gas molecules own volume, not the container volume, with zero intermolecular space between them, so in that case you can pretty much understand that the amount of volume of this, I mean, let's say if I increase this thing indefinitely over here, let's say by 2 million row and 2 million columns, that volume of that cube would be pretty much equal to the cubic volume of each of the individual thing, because that can become a cubic shape where you would not be essentially calculating the available volume occupied by the gas molecules, not necessarily by the sphere, because they can be considered to be arranged in this fashion, but they wouldn't be able to occupy this volume because this volume is too small for them to occupy. So they are going to occupy such a big shape of the volume. For example, I mean, if you just place this structure into a location, how much physical space would you have available for your other purpose? You're going to have this much rectangular space perfectly occupied, and other space would be available to you, right?
Yes, sir.
So if it's a rectangular space available, so we can pretty much consider that each individual atom actually occupies a cubic shape of this much. If I assume that the space is continuously distributed. So try to assume that
আচ্ছা ওই যে ওই
Sandesh and a ping pong ball.
আচ্ছা বেসিক্যালি ওই ছোট পার্ট গুলো মানে ছোট ভলিউম গুলোকে মানে কভার আপ করার জন্য এই কিউবিক অ্যাজাম্পশন না হয়েছে।
Exactly, because that's more practical. That's more practical.
মানে স্যার
তাহলে স্যার এইখানে যে ওই ওরা কিউবিকটা করতেছে তাহলে তো আমার ভলিউমের ইয়েটা ভ্যালুটা একটু সামওয়াট বেশি হবে না রিয়েল ভলিউমটা থেকে?
হ্যাঁ, বেশি হওয়ার কারণ হচ্ছে that although the atoms are spherical, but you cannot essentially, whenever you merge all the atoms side by side or convert them into a liquid, well, this is a basic representation for a liquid state. So whenever you convert them into a liquid or maybe into a solid, doesn't matter. So they are touching each other. You cannot fill up the void in between those particles. There will always be some void in between these two particles. I mean, it's not possible that we're gonna squeeze them overhand. We're gonna crush them together to make them into a compacted structure. That's not gonna happen. Atoms will remain as atoms. Molecules will remain as molecules, right?
Yes, sir.
So you cannot essentially fill up this space at any scenario. So even though those spaces are empty, but that space is not available for us to occupy another molecule. So we can pretty much say that this space is also occupied.
So it's compensating for the loss, actually, isn't it? Sort of. Because আমরা empty space এর ব্যাপারটা তো আসলে
I'm not sure if that phrase can be used over here. I'm not sure. I'm going to masking to dekhi and let's have a go for the masking and the examiners report. Number 18. Either this much is too big compared to this much, or the ratio of the volume is about 10 to the minus 4, justified because volume of molecules is negligible. Good. It was expected that a comparison would be made between the volumes occupied by the atoms and the volume of the container vessel. Many candidates did not include a comparison. Okay, fine. So most of the candidates did mention this thing as per the mark scheme, but they forgot to do this comparison. Yeah, makes sense. You have to show both of them. This is the answer that you are asked to explain using this information. So if you miss this out, you're going to lose 1 mark. 19.
19 is C2 last report.
C1 এর আনসার কত আসছে? Exactly
30 joule.
Exactly 30 তো আসে না। 30 এর পরে কত ডেসিমাল প্লেসেস কি আসছে? নাকি এক্স্যাক্টলি 30 আসছে?
স্যার এক্স্যাক্টলি 30।
এক্স্যাক্টলি 30 আসছে?
স্যার শো করতে বলছে তো।
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে। 2 তো হচ্ছে determine the temperature change of the gas and state whether the change is an increase or decrease. আচ্ছা বুঝাচ্ছি আমি। Let's have a look at this question. This is a pretty interesting one because we're going to have to use this idea over here, I believe. The amount of 0.18 mole of an ideal gas is held in an insulated cylinder fitted with a piston as shown in figure 2.1. Atmospheric pressure is 1.0 to 10 to the 5 Pascal. The volume of the gas is suddenly increased from 1.8 into 10 to the 3 centimeter cube to 2.1 into 10 to the 3 centimeter cube. So this word suddenly is the key here. This word suddenly is the key here. This change was happened suddenly, which means we did not allow enough time for any heat to get out of the system if that was required, or any heat to enter into the system if that was required. We did this process really fast. This is a very important information that we are not allowing enough time for the heat transfer into or out of the cylinder from the environment. So how does that affect our answer? Have a look. Let's go forward. For the expansion of the gas, calculate the work done by the gas and ensure that the internal energy changes by 30 joules. So what is happening is that we are going to increase this volume. So the piston is pulled outwards, right? Because the volume of the gas is suddenly increased. So whenever the piston has suddenly increased, this would have moved out some atmospheric particles out of its path to move out those atmospheric particles, some amount of work has to be done on those atmospheric particles, which as per this question is 30 joule. Which means this 30 joule amount of energy must come from inside the available gas. This gas should lose 30 joule of energy, and that energy should be transferred to the atmosphere. Which means essentially this gas should become cool or hot.
Cool, sir.
Shouldn't it be hot?
No, if it was pushed in, then work would have been done over here. Have a look. In this case, Q is 0 because the process is very fast. So no heat was supplied, no heat was lost. So forget about Q. So whenever we are expanding out the volume, work is being done on the atmosphere. So work is leaving from the system. W in this case was defined as what? Work done on the system, right? For this equation, W was defined as work done on the system. So if W
Yes.
is relieving, then W is supposed to be negative. W is negative, then del U should also be negative. Del U negative means what? The total internal energy will become less. Or in other terms, I can say this piston is going to lose 30 joule of internal energy, because in the process of pulling this piston out, 30 joule of energy would be going out from this thing. So that way, this thing would become cooler because the energy is going out from the gas as a form of work onto the atmosphere. So that your gas is actually losing 30 joule of energy, which reduces the internal energy, and that's how we can go ahead and explain this question. Now, this question further asks us that how much would be the change of temperature that can be calculated in a logical way. If I just have a look over here, so we did some del V over here. Atmospheric pressure was this much, and we're temperature change calculate করার formula কি? PV goes to nRT. এখানে আমাদের V বাড়ছে, T তো কমে যাবে, Q equals to MC delta theta না, PV equals to 1/3 ms square, PV equals to 3/2 kT. Exactly. না, PV equals to 3/2 kT না তো, P equals to 1/3 rho square.
Sir, PV is equals to NKT.
PV equals to NKT. NKT. এখানে আমাদের তাহলে আমাদের NK হচ্ছে কনস্ট্যান্ট, সো PV প্রপোর্শন টু T. সো আগের কেসে আমাদের PV এর ভ্যালু ছিল কত সেটা বাই করতে হবে।
স্যার আমরা 3/2 kT মানে তো জানি কাইনেটিক এনার্জি, সো এটা দিয়ে এনার্জি চেঞ্জের সাথে ইকুয়েট করলে আমরা তখন টেম্পারেচার চেঞ্জটা পেয়ে যাব না, মানে কতটুকু টেম্পারেচার।
তুমি সেকেন্ড কেসে কাইনেটিক এনার্জি ভ্যালু পাবা কোত্থেকে?
স্যার ওই যে 30 জুল ইন্টারনাল এনার্জি যেটা লস হয়ে গেল,
ওটা
আমার
তো লস হয়ে গেছে, বাট হোয়াট উড বি দ্য অ্যাবসলিউট কাইনেটিক এনার্জি অফ এভারেজ? ওটা তো নাই,
আগেরটা তো জানি না,
আগেরটা তো জানি না এক্স্যাক্টলি। ক্যালকুলেট করা যাবে, চাইলে ক্যালকুলেট করা যাবে, করা সমস্যা না, বাট না করে করা পসিবল, আমি সেটা চিন্তা করতেছি। Equals to nRT equals to nR is a constant, so delta PV should be equals to delta T. P1 V1 by P2 V2 equals to T1 by T2. Yeah. আচ্ছা হ্যাঁ পাইছি। It's not rocket science. আচ্ছা আমি কি চিন্তা করতেছি এখন সেটা সহ বলি তোমাদেরকে, so that you can try to get a grip of on my thought process. So what I was assuming that the ideal gas formula goes by this: PV by T equals to a constant. And now we know that constant is a constant. So ultimately এটা থেকে both হিসাব টোটাল করে আমরা যেটা পাই সেটা হচ্ছে PV equals to nRT. Now for a fixed amount of gas, this equation is true. For if n is constant, this equation is true. So n is actually a constant because we are not allowing any gas in or out of the system. R is also a constant, so this entire thing is a constant. In the question, as per the question, we are changing the volume. So that might also bring about some change in the pressure, but we do not know what is the change of the pressure. Do you know the change of the pressure? কোশ্চেন কি প্রেসার চেঞ্জের কথা বলছে?
No. No. Sir.
স্যার গ্যাসের জন্য প্রেসারটা কনস্ট্যান্ট ধরি না, যে পি ডেল ভি ওইটা ওইভাবে
No.
করব?
আমরা কি প্রেসার কনস্ট্যান্ট ধরে নিছি?
না স্যার, যে এক্সপ্যানশন
না
কিংবা
না বলতেছি ঝামেলা আছে এখানে। ঝামেলাটা হচ্ছে অ্যাটমসফিয়ার প্রেসারটা কনস্ট্যান্ট, বাট গ্যাসের প্রেসার তো কমে যাবে। আমরা যখন whenever we're gonna pull out the piston outwards, the gas pressure inside this thing would become less. So can you somehow calculate that pressure? P1 equals to P2V2. P1 equals to P2V2 লিখি এখানে, তার কোন লাভ আছে? P1 equals to P2V2 equals to T. PV equals to NKT দিয়ে করা যাবে, কিন্তু PV equals to NKT দিয়ে আমি যদি করতে না চাই তাহলে কেন? তার মাস কেন দেখি পাই না।
স্যার এক্সামিনার রিপোর্টে নাকি বলে বলছে স্যার যে কোশ্চেন ওয়াজ রিমুভ, এটা দেখুন তো।
ও অর্ণব, তুমি কি এই কোশ্চেনের কথা বলছিলে আমাকে ওই দিন?
হ্যাঁ।
ও আচ্ছা, হ্যাঁ, দিস কোশ্চেন হ্যাড টু বি রিমুভড। এইটুকু কি আমি লিখছি না এইটুকু মাঝখানে ছিল? আচ্ছা, ভেরি গুড। এই যে এখানে লেখো ডেল্টা ই ইকুয়ালস টু দেখাচ্ছে হচ্ছে এন আর ডেল্টা টি। সো ডেল্টা ই হচ্ছে 30 জুল, হুইচ ইজ গুড। এন হচ্ছে 0.18, আর হচ্ছে এটা, ডেল্টা টি হচ্ছে টেম্পারেচার। বাট এটা তো করতে পারার কথা, এখানে তো মোল নাম্বার দেওয়া নাই। গ্যাসের মোল নাম্বার দেওয়া আছে এখানে কোথাও? এই পুরো কোশ্চেনের কথা কি গ্যাস আছে? 0.18
মানে
দেওয়া
স্যার
আছে।
পিভি ইকুয়ালস টু এনআরটি আর
মোল দেওয়া আছে।
না, মোল নাম্বার দেওয়া আছে অলরেডি, মোল নাম্বার দেওয়া আছে।
পিভি ইকুয়ালস টু এনআরটি আর ডব্লিউ ইকুয়ালস টু ডেল পিভি, ওই দুইটা কম্বাইন করেছে তো।
না, আমি বলি তোমাকে, ওরা এই ক্যালকুলেশনটা দেখাইছে, বাট আলটিমেটলি হচ্ছে আনসারটি দ্য ইনফরমেশন প্রোভাইডেড ইন দ্য কোশ্চেন ওয়াজ ইনসাফিসিয়েন্ট ফর কারেক্ট ক্যালকুলেশন অফ দ্য রিকোয়ার্ড টেম্পারেচার। দিস ইজ দ্য কোশ্চেন ওয়াজ নট ইনক্লুডেড ইন দ্য ওভারঅল অ্যাসেসমেন্ট। বলতেছি কেন ওরা এটা ক্যালকুলেট করছে। ওরা এখানে যে হিসাবটা দেখাইছে এই হিসাবটা রং ইন দ্য সেন্স ওয়াই you can consider that P into delta V is the amount of work done on the atmosphere. That is the applicable for a scenario when the atmospheric pressure is constant, but the volume of the atmosphere is becoming more. If you think that, what do I even mean? What I mean is that when the piston was in the pushed in state, then the atmosphere had a certain volume. But whenever the piston was pushed outwards, then the atmosphere had to give out this much space. So work was done on the atmosphere, but in that process, the atmospheric pressure did not change, because atmospheric pressure would not change. It's the pressure of the whole atmosphere. So that much volume change does not do anything to the atmosphere. So P into delta V is applicable for cases where the pressure of the system remains constant, which in this case is the atmosphere, and the volume change is value. So for the work done on the atmosphere, we can use constant pressure into change of volume. That's possible. But you cannot essentially do this for this part. PV equals to nRT if you consider the scenario for PV equals to nRT. Whenever the piston will be pulled outwards, your P and V both will change. So what we could do is that if we knew the things properly, we could have written that P1 equals to nRT1. That is possible. And for a second scenario, we could have calculated P2 V2 equals to nRT2. If we knew all of these four variables, if we knew all of these variables, yes, we could have calculated out the T2 value. I mean, we can calculate out the T1 value. T1 value already can dawa ase na? What is the T1 value? Initial temperature ki dawa ase? Initial temperature dawa nai. Initial temperature dawa nai boli problem ta hoise. We cannot simply write that delta E equals to nr delta theta. This would not be a correct expression over here, because this delta E for the inside of the gas, this is 30 joule thik ase. But this needs to be, this needs to be calculated in terms of the pressure change, also the volume change. The question does not provide us the final pressure value. We only know P1, we only know V1, we only know V2, but we do not know P2. And the problem is that we cannot calculate out P2 because P1 V1 equals to P2 V2. Boyle's law is applicable for scenarios where temperature remains constant. But we can see over in this scenario that the temperature is not going to be remaining constant. So if we want to calculate this to equation, we need to have this P2 value present in the question. Only in that case, you should be able to calculate the T1, and then from this you can calculate the T2, then you can find out the difference by subtracting these two numbers. That was the missing link of the question, that the pressure inside the cylinder after the piston was pulled out was not provided. Hence, they removed that question. বুঝে গেল কিনা?
Yes, sir.
আচ্ছা,
Yes,
এখানে
sir.
আরেকটা জিনিস যেটা হচ্ছে যে জেসিতে আসলে এই ধরনের ঘটনা হয়, এই ধরনের একটা প্রবলেম তোমার তো এসেও দেখছো, যে গ্রাফে একটা ইলাস্টিসিটি একটা গ্রাফে এরকম একটা প্রবলেম ছিল, মনে আছে? অ্যাকচুয়াল কোশ্চেন দিয়েছিল যে 10 টু দি পাওয়ার 8 দিয়ে, কিন্তু গ্রাফের এক্সেসে প্লট করা ছিল 10 টু দি পাওয়ার 6 দিয়ে। Anyone remember this question? No one? What the hell? বললাম তোমরা এরকম কেন? আমি তোমাদেরকে ফ্রিতে ফিলোসফি দেওয়াতে তোমরা কি মাইন্ড করছো?
না স্যার।
না স্যার, আসলে মনে নাই।
স্যার কোয়েশ্চেনটা কি ছিল?
তোমাদেরকে ফ্রিতে ফিলোসফি দেওয়াতে তোমরা কি মাইন্ড করছো?
না না স্যার, ভালোই লেগেছে।
কিন্তু ভালো লাগার মতো কোনো কথা বলি নাই।
স্যার বেসিক্যালি প্রেজেন্টে থাকার কথাটা বলেছেন, ভালো লেগেছে। মানে লিভিং ইন দ্য নাও।
No, that was not my aim.
না ইয়া স্যার ওইটা বলে নাই, তুই কি বলছিস?
ও সরি।
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Look, this is W07 question number 2. I actually edited the question to make sense to the kids for this question. So, octo number 07, question number 4. So let's try and find that out. ON04, question number 4. মামুন রুমে তো আচ্ছা, আজকে সকাল দরজা খুলছিলাম, এই জন্য মশা আসছে রুমে এত। কি হলো? কি দেখলাম এই মাত্র? Oh, W07, question number 4. Octo number 4 না। ওকে, এই যে দেখো এখানে যে কোশ্চেনটা আছে, এই কোশ্চেনটা তো হয়ে গেল। Let's have a look. This question said this: a sample of material is a form of cylinder rod, has a length tail of uniform area of cross section A. Rod undergoes an increased tensile stress until it breaks. Where performance shows a variation stress of the strain in the rod. Okay. Straight. So have a look. Here the stress was given to 10 to the power 8 Pascal. ঠিক আছে? But this over here, when they were going for the calculation of this one, they use this information that কি ব্যাপার, আমি কি ভুল দেখতেছি বারবার?
স্যার এগুলো কি এসে?
হ্যাঁ, এসে তুমি এই বর্ষ করছো তো, সরি 14 নম্বর কোশ্চেন, ভুল বলছি। হ্যাঁ, আমি ভুল দেখতেছিলাম, আমি ক্লাস নিতেছি। টেবিলে ঢাকাতে না দেখো, আমি পরে পরে খাবো। S10 22 Q5 10 22
স্যার 14 এ A3 না
হ্যাঁ
14 এর A2 না ইলাস্টিসিটি এটা
হ্যাঁ 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 14 এ 2 এই দেখতেছি আমি এই যে পাইছি এখানে দেখো টেন্সর ফোর্স অফ এ সার্টেন সিস্টেম ওয়াজ গিভেন এখানে ভ্যালু হতো স্ট্রেস দেওয়া হচ্ছে 10 টু দি পাওয়ার 8 প্যাসকেল আর আলটিমেটলি ওরা যখন এখানে এই কোশ্চেনটা গিয়ে করছে এই কোশ্চেন অবশ্য হচ্ছে 10 টু দি পাওয়ার 6 প্যাসকেল এই যে দেখো এই যে এখানে একটা ভুল করছে দেখছো ওই যে can you see that
ইয়েস স্যার
everyone সো এইটার রেসপন্সে ওরা মার্কস কিনো যেটা বলছে সেটা হচ্ছে এরকম MS22 এই যে this mark was removed from the assessment owing to a power of 10 inconsistency in the printed question paper তার মানে হচ্ছে এই কোশ্চেনটা পুরো পেপার থেকে বাদ দিছে এটা হয় সেই কোশ্চেন হয় সব ইয়ারে হয় না বাট র্যান্ডমলি হইতেই পারে so you should ask me at this point that sir এটা যখন হয় তখন অ্যাকচুয়ালি তাহলে কোশ্চেন পেপার মার্ক করে কেমনে you should ask me that no one wants to ask me that okay yes never mind let's move on maybe you already know this thing
স্যার
বলো
19 এর একটু এমএসটা একটু এক্সপ্লেইন করবেন
কোনটা
স্যার 19 এর এমএস এর সেকেন্ড পয়েন্ট
the energy has to be random এটা random wordটা
yes sir
random means that you are not going to have the exact same value of kinetic or potential energy at each individual each individual atom or each individual particle you're not going to have that different particle are going to have different values of kinetic and potential energy at the same time instant but the total internal energy at any instant would mean the sum of all the random kinetic energies and random potential energies
thank you sir
বুঝাইছে
হ্যাঁ
মানে দুইটা মানে ভ্যালুগুলো যে র্যান্ডম হবে এই কথাটাও তোমার এই ডেফিনেশনের মধ্যে ইনক্লুডেড থাকতে হবে ওইজন্য ওই একটা ওয়ার্ডের জন্য আলাদা করে একটা মার্ক দিছে আচ্ছা এটা গেল তারপর হচ্ছে 20 তে কার প্রবলেম
স্যার 20 A1
A1 কেন 20 তো প্রবলেম হওয়ার কথা B তে
স্যার B তেও হইছে
আয় হায় কি বলো So the basic assumption of kinetic theory of gases that leads to the conclusion that the potential energy within the atoms is zero. হ্যাঁ বলো কি সমস্যা
মানে ঠিক গুছায় লিখতে পারতেছি না আর মার্ক স্কিমটাও বুঝতেছি না
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে let me start from the beginning why an object can have potential energy do you understand this concept
yes sir
why tell me you can be wrong if you're wrong I'll correct you but participate why do you think an object can have potential energy
স্যার ওই যে আপনি বললেন যে দুইটা অবজেক্ট মাঝখানে এনি কাইন্ড অফ গ্র্যাভিটেশনাল অর ইলেকট্রোস্ট্যাটিক ফোর্স থাকলে এটা এনার্জি রাইজ করে তাই
and it can rise করে
An object has potential energy when it has the ability to go to a lower energy state.
okay but why I mean you're all correct but other than me asking you why did let me specify that if I want to express this idea in terms of force how would you express this idea in terms of force
For intermolecular force.
Intermolecular force
I don't need a word I need an explanation
মানে দুইটা পার্টিকেলের মধ্যে ইন্টারমলিকুলার ফোর্সেস গুলো যাতে মানে দুইটা পার্টিকেল যাতে একসাথে থাকে কারণ একটা বন্ড লাগে ওই বন্ডটার জন্য পটেনশিয়াল এনার্জিটা
স্যার এটা কি আইডিয়াল কেস না স্যার আইডিয়াল কেসে তো হচ্ছে মানে ইন্টারমলিকুলার ফোর্স প্রেজেন্ট নাই
আমি এখন ইন্টারমলিকুলার ফোর্সের আইডিয়া এন্টারটেইন করতেছি না এখন intermolecular forces idea entertain করতেছে না. My question was that why should it be that if two objects have a force between them, they can be subject to potential energy? That was my question.
স্যার বিকজ সেপারেশনটা কমানোর তো চান্স থাকে, যখন সেপারেশন অনেক বেশি থাকে there is also লাইক ওয়ার্ক ডান করেই তো আমরা হচ্ছে অ্যাকচুয়ালি সেপারেশনটা কমাই, রাইট? আউটসাইড থেকে ওয়ার্ক ডান করতে হয়।
Shubro, you have given me the correct phrases, but you put them wrong, slightly put them wrong. So thank you for that. This is the phrase that I was trying to get out of you.
Work done on the system, sir, from outside.
Exactly. Whenever two objects are subject to force between them, whether repulsive force or attractive force, this would mean that as long as they have a force between them, separating them further or getting them closer together is going to require some work, or is going to be giving out some work. There has to be some energy change happen if the separation between the two particles have to change. That is the basic outcome of two objects being bonded by a force. এই স্টেটমেন্টটাকে ভালো করে অ্যাবজর্ব করো। আমি আবার বলতেছি, if two objects are bonded by a force, it would mean changing the distance in between them would involve some sort of energy transfer. And repulsive হলে একরকম, attractive হলে একরকম, কাছে আসলে একরকম, দূরে গেলে একরকম. That can be varied depending upon the situation which you know. But if they are bonded by a force, changing the separation has to involve some amount of energy transfer. এই আইডিয়াটা বুঝা যাচ্ছে কিনা?
Yes, sir.
Everyone else?
Yes, sir.
So because you have to have some sort of energy change, what is that form of energy that will undergo that change? That is exactly what we're defining as potential energy. The type of energy that would be varied for energy to get added to a reservoir or energy to be subtracted from a reservoir. That energy is what we're defining as potential energy. So potential energy exists between two objects when they're bonded by a force. If force does not exist between two objects, they would not have any potential energy between themselves. Potential energy concept বুঝা গেছে?
So sir, it's the energy that changes because of the change in the separation between atoms or molecules which have a force between them.
Exactly. So there has to be a force between them, attractive or repulsive, doesn't matter. That can lead to a delta E whenever the separation between them will change. So this question, now I'm coming back to this question. State the basic assumption of the kinetic energy of theory of gases that leads to the conclusion that the potential energy between the atoms of an ideal gas is zero. That basic assumption is that there is no force that exists between two gas molecules when they are moving in between collisions. So particles are going to only exert force onto each other while they are doing the collisions, or to be more accurate, when they are doing the collisions, because for the ideal gas particles, the collisions are considered to be instantaneous. The hell? Okay. The particles are considered to be instantaneous, which means essentially that as long as the one particle is traveling from one collision onto the next collision, in this journey period, they will be subjected to zero force, which means the particles don't have any force of attraction and repulsion among themselves. They will only exert force onto each other and on the container wall while they will do the collision. Since there is no continuous force available, so change of separation would not bring about any idea of delta E. Since delta E is not possible, which means the reservoir is not existing. চেইনটা বুঝা যাচ্ছে? থট প্রসেসের যে চেইনটা, এটা কি বুঝা যাচ্ছে?
Sir, last part of it to repeat করবেন?
Sure. The particles would only exert force onto each other when they are under collision with themselves or the container wall. While they are moving from one collision to the other collision, they are not subject to any force whatsoever, which means the particles don't attract each other or repel each other at all. Since there is no force between each other, so there is no question of delta E as their separation will be increased or decreased.
Yes, sir.
Since there is no delta E, that would essentially mean the reservoir from which the delta E could have happened or towards which it could have happened, that has to be 0 in the first place. That simply doesn't exist. That's why delta E is not also possible.
No force, so no work. Normal paper.
Exactly. Since there is no force, so work doesn't need to be fed in. Work would not even come out. Since work doesn't have to be done to make the separation change, so they don't have any potential energy. বুঝা গেছে কি?
Yes, sir.
কনসেপচুয়াল আইডিয়াটা ক্লিয়ার করো। কনসেপচুয়াল আইডিয়াটা ক্লিয়ার হলে তোমরা আনসার গুছা লিখতে পারবে। কনসেপ্ট ক্লিয়ার না হলে বারবার একই জায়গাতে তোমার ঘুরপাক খাইতে থাকবে। It's important that you understand the concept of it.
Sir, but like when they move, they exert force on one another, right? Like when they move. But কোনো attractive or repulsive force, and that's why আপনাদের কোনো
also. First clause was wrong. When they move, they don't exert any force onto each other. You said they do exert.
Yeah, like we take confusion.
When they move, they don't exert force onto each other. They only exert force onto each other when they're in collision.
With the wall.
Or with themselves.
Or with themselves. Okay.
Sir.
G.
So because W is equal to FD, since there is no F, there is no W either.
Yeah, that also perfectly makes sense. Yep. Delta E should be coming from some form of W. W should be expressed by force into displacement. Displacement is happening because particles are continuously getting separated or getting closer to each other. But if delta E has to be 0, F has to be 0. So the idea is that we are defining that the particles don't have any F in between them. So there is no delta E. So there is no W. So potential energy is defined to be 0. বললাম বুঝা গেছে এই কথাটা? ক্লিয়ার হয়েছে কিনা সবার কাছে পারফেক্টলি?
জি স্যার বুঝছি।
Yes, sir.
জি স্যার।
That's about 5 people interacting with me. There are 55 other people in the channel.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we'll go for B. I'll help you for the calculation of B. B এর এই মার্ক স্কিমটা পুরোপুরি ভুল আছে। পুরোপুরি ভুল। So what is happening in this mass scheme? I'll help you with that. বলো।
A3 টা কি এক্সপ্লেইন করছেন স্যার?
না।
A3 টা একটু স্যার বুঝতে প্রবলেম আছে। মাস স্কিম আসলে
আরে কি বলো? A3 তো সহজ।
এক্সপ্লেইন
স্যার এই কোশ্চেনের টেবিল আর মার্ক স্কিমের টেবিলটা পুরো মানে কনফ্লিক্ট করে।
মার্ক স্কিমের টেবিল ভুল আছে?
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
কোথায় ভুল আছে বলতেছে আমি ওই জন্য পুরো কোশ্চেনটা কপি করতেছি এখানে ওয়ার্ডে so that we can go ahead and
আচ্ছা সরি মাই ব্যাড A3 লাগবে না।
Yep. Okay, now let's give it a try. আচ্ছা এটা জুম আউট করা যাবে না এই ফরম্যাটে দেখো A fixed amount mass of gas of an ideal gas undergoes a cycle PQRP in of changes as shown in figure 2.1. Volume axis, pressure axis, state the change in internal energy of the gas during one complete cycle of PQRP. That would be 0. Because if he undergoes a full cycle, after the entire cycle is finished, it will be reached to the same value of pressure and volume, which means the product of P and V would essentially be same. One other way I should tell you is that the product of P into V gives us a somewhat measurement of the energy of the whole gas. I did not show you this in our theoretical discussion, but I'm going to show you this now. PV equals to what? 1/3 mc square, right? ঠিক কি না?
Yes, sir.
তাহলে আমি PV equals to যদি half mc square লিখতে চাই because I want to bring about the K of the particles. So what else should I have over here? N And what else do I need to give here?
3
by 3.
2 by 3.
2 by 3.
2 by 3.
ঠিক আছে? And এই পুরো জিনিসটা হচ্ছে the total kinetic energy of the all molecules. This is the average kinetic energy of one molecule. This is the number of particles. So if you multiply this thing, you get the total kinetic energy of the molecules, which is basically the total energy of the gas. So I can write this as the total energy of the gas.
স্যার এনটা ভিতরে যাবে না?
হ্যাঁ, আমি তো ওই জন্য পুরো লিখলাম, এটা ভিতরে দিতে ভুলে গেছিলাম। So E into 2 by 3. So you can say the product of pressure into volume of for an ideal gas, this quantity numerically would be equal to 2/3 of the total energy of the gas. এই ইকুয়েশনটা কি অ্যাপ্রিশিয়েট করা যাচ্ছে? দেখো, so what this essentially means that if you reach to the same product value of P into V, your E value will also be unchanged because 2 by 3 is a basically numerical constant. So that's what it means over here, that whenever the gas would undergo this entire cycle and eventually reach to the same initial value, the total change of internal energy would be 0 because the P and V value would be essentially become same. Number 2 says calculate the work done on the gas during the change from P to Q. এটা করতে পারার কথা। এটা কত আসছে? বলো
240 joule.
240 joule. And this was work done on the gas, which means if you consider the basic formula, this should be coming up as positive W. Acha. Some energy changes during the cycle PQRP is shown in figure 2.2. Change work done on gas, heat supplied to gas, increase in internal energy. So আমাদের যে ফর্মুলাটা আমরা শিখছি সেটা হচ্ছে এরকম, W, এটা হচ্ছে Q, এটা হচ্ছে delta U. The formula that we know, if this is work done on gas, then W plus, আচ্ছা Qটা দেখতে খুব বদগট হয়ে গেছে, Qটাকে ভালো করে লিখি।
স্যার 240 ওইটা কোথা থেকে পেলাম? 2043
এটা পাইছে হচ্ছে P into delta V করে, constant pressure into change in volume করে। From P to Q দেখো, P to Q তে আমাদের pressure constant, that would be the pressure value over here. I think it's 4 into 10 to the 5 Pascal. That pressure into the change in volume. Initial volume was high, final volume was low, so you just do the subtraction. If
coordinate minus করব।
because we are essentially working with the question is already defining the preposition, so don't bother to do final minus initial because that will give you a minus sign. So that way work done, that would represent that work done on the gas is negative, but that's not the case. If we are compressing the gas, then work has to be done on the gas. That's why big minus small is convenient for this scenario.
Okay sir, so basically আমরা ওই Q কোঅর্ডিনেটটাই ইউজ করতেছি আর ভলিউমটার জন্য জাস্ট P minus Q করতেছি।
We are using the pressure value of this entire line.
Yes,
not
sir.
for Q or not for P, for the entire line, which means including P and Q both. This is the constant pressure into the change of volume, which comes from the volume axis.
আর স্যার নাম্বার 1 টাতে কি হবে? মানে পার্টটা ঠিক বুঝি নাই লাস্টের দিকে।
0 হবে।
0 কেন হবে? মানে PV equals to E into 2 by 3 ওটুক পর্যন্ত বুঝছি।
So if after a lot of different changes, a gas reaches to the same value of P and V, then E should be exactly same as initial.
ও আচ্ছা স্যার, মানে গ্রাফে দেখা যাচ্ছে যে এটা একটা মানে ট্রায়াঙ্গেল যেটা লুপের মতন, এই কারণে 0 হবে।
Exactly. After this entire cycle, the gas reaches back to the same initial conditions.
আচ্ছা স্যার, থ্যাংক ইউ।
Sure, no problem. So theta versus some energy changes during the cycle PQRP are shown in figure 2.2. So we are trying to fill this up. So এই fill up এর মধ্যে কিছু ঝামেলা আছে, আমি একটা করে বলতেছি। This question tells us that whenever it is going P to Q, work done on the gas is something. So এটা আমরা already calculate করছি। This calculated value was supposed to be 240. And তুমি simply এই ইকুয়েশনটা হিসাব করো। এটা হচ্ছে আমাদের ফার্স্ট ল অফ থার্মোডাইনামিক্স। এই ইকুয়েশন ইউজ করলে এখানে কত আসার কথা? 240 plus minus 600 equals to কত হবে এখানে?
So minus 360.
Minus 360 হবে। So this is supposed to be that. তারপর
720
Q2R এর জন্য W বলে দিছে 0, ওরা বলে দিছে 0. Q হচ্ছে plus 720. So by default this is supposed to be plus 720, right?
Yes.
Now to fill up this column, we have to use another idea. That idea is, after this 3 cycle for this column, the total sum of these 3 numbers should be equal to 0. Because that was obtained over here. When the cycle will be finished from P to Q, Q to R, and back to R to P, then the total internal energy should be 0, which means the total sum of the values of this column should be 0. How much should you have over here so that all 3 of them is equal to 0? What number should exist here so that this column sum would be 0? Calculate that number.
minus 480.
Minus
এটা 0
480. না
minus 360
work done on gas minus 480 হবে না?
আমি এটাতে এখন আসি নাই।
minus 360.
এটাতে একটু পরে আসতেছে। আমি এই কলামটাকে করতেছি বিকজ এই কলামটা আমি লজিক্যালি বের করতে পারবো। এটা বের করার পরে আমাকে এটা করতে হবে। এবং এই কলামের লজিক হচ্ছে, the logic for this column is that the total delta U after the entire cycle should be 0. So if this has to be 0, what should exist here? This is supposed to be minus 360, right?
Yes.
Yes.
এটা কি ঠিক ছিল? এটাও ঠিক ছিল, এটাও ঠিক আছে। This should be minus 360, ঠিক আছে। So if this is supposed to be minus 360, now have a look. Now try to understand. This number plus 480 should give you minus 360. So what number should be over here? This plus this should be equal to minus 360. So what number should be here?
minus 120.
Nope.
Minus 840.
Yes. This would be the card calculator value for this table. This table answer was messed up. এটা মার্ক স্কিমে কারেক্ট করে নাও। আমি মার্ক স্কিম বিষয়ে কারেক্ট করি নাই যাতে করে তোমরা এই প্রবলেমটা নিয়ে মাথা কামাও, বদার্ড হও এন্ড গেট টু আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ড দ্য মার্ক স্কিমে ভুল থাকে। এখন সিচুয়েশন হচ্ছে মার্ক স্কিমটা আমরা একটু দেখি যে মার্ক স্কিম আসলে কি গড়বড় করছে। কারণ আই বিলিভ তোমরা অনেকেই আছো যারা এই ওয়ার্কশিটটা ছুঁয়েও দেখো নাই। সো first of all, the given values that they have given over here, those values are not even correct. But the logic they have used over here, that is absolutely correct. What is the logic? First row plus second row equals to third row. 240 plus 0 equals to 240. That's good. 0 plus 320 equals to 320. That's also good. The sum of these 3 numbers should be 0. So these two bar addition, so this has to be minus 560. And see, this is 0. So this has to be also minus 560. So the logic by which they solve this number, that is perfectly good. But since they messed up these given values, they got all the wrong values in the other places as well. That's what happened. Do I make sense?
Yes, sir.
Sir, so their logic of solving this problem is okay, but the values are just wrong. Right?
Yes, the values are just wrong. Correct. Let's have a look at the examination report, which they did not mess up. I mean, in general, changes P to Q and Q to R were shown correctly. Despite having answered B1 correctly, it was usual that to find the values for the change in internal energy did not add up to 0. So yeah, many students did not understand that this column had to be calculated to be 0. So, but other things, I mean, first column was correct, and এইটা যদি ঠিকমতো ক্যালকুলেট করতে না পারে তাহলে এটা ক্যালকুলেট করার কোনো কারণ নাই। You can only calculate this value once you have filled up this one correctly using the idea that the total sum of these 3 numbers should be 0. So kids who could not calculate out this value obviously could not calculate out this value correctly as well.
Sir, এক সেকেন্ড 560 আসলো কোথা থেকে?
ভুলে।
ও
স্যার একটা কোয়েশ্চেন আছে।
বলো।
স্যার এখানে যে ওরা ভুল মার্কস স্কিম দিছে, তাহলে এখন যদি অ্যাকচুয়াল এক্সাম হতো তাহলে তখন সেক্ষেত্রে কি আমার মার্কস হইতাম না রাইট অ্যান্সার লিখে?
I honestly don't know the answer of this question. I honestly don't. What I believe is that the actual question was supposed to be like this. I mean, the mark scheme result. The actual question should have had these values. what I feel like is that this table was printed wrong. But since you have already have this equation, so you're gonna end up with these numbers anyway. So the question to your answer is that should we get the mark or not? I honestly do not know.
So what the examiner's report of লেখে না এটা ব্যাপারে।
That's why I'm saying I do not know.
স্যার এক্সামিনারে এতবার চেক করে তারপরেও ভুল থেকে যায়। Weird.
মানুষ মাত্রই ভুল।
আচ্ছা।
That is exactly why they have a system for challenging their paper, for which you pay for which the customers pay. They made a mistake. You want to find out their mistake, but you gotta pay for that service.
Capitalist system.
Yeah.
ডাকাত।
So sir,
well,
একটু আগে তো দেখালেন যে
qualified ডাকাত which can give you valuable certificate. So get that. Yeah, bolo. Yeah, Rafid bolo. Sorry, I was interrupting.
Sir, আপনি তো তখন দেখলেন যে kinetic energy is equal to 3/2 kT, মানে সরি 3/2 into PV। তাহলে স্যার এমনি নরমালি যখন ধরেন ভলিউম কনস্ট্যান্ট থাকে আর প্রেসার চেঞ্জ হয় তখনও তো আমার ইন্টারনাল এনার্জি চেঞ্জ হওয়ার কথা, রাইট? বাট আমরা এটাকে ডিসরিগার্ড করি কেন?
আরেকবার বলো, ভলিউম কনস্ট্যান্ট থেকে যদি প্রেসার চেঞ্জ করি?
জি স্যার, হ্যাঁ ওটা তো মানে যদি আমরা ধরি যে 3/2 PV তাহলে তো চেঞ্জ হচ্ছে, কিন্তু why do we don't consider that? মানে আমরা এটা কেন বাদ দিয়ে দিই?
বলতেছি এটা বাদ দেওয়ার কারণ হচ্ছে যে whenever we consider that the pressure of the gas is being increased, then how can I put this? বলতেছি দাঁড়াও। Okay, what you are asking me is that, I mean, why can't we calculate the delta E from the graph for the QR segment? Is that another version of your question?
Yes sir, that we did.
I think we should be logically we should be able to do that, because if volume is kept constant and delta P is a value, so we can essentially say P into delta V. Delta V into P should also give us 3/2 delta E. That should be a logical thing.
But sir, delta T is 0, I guess.
কোথায়? QR এ?
মানে টেম্পারেচার কনস্ট্যান্ট থাকার কথা না।
Not essentially. Not essentially. I'll tell you why not essentially. Try to think of a scenario. If you want to physically চিন্তা করো, if you want to achieve a situation where you're gonna have a certain amount of gas confined in a fixed volume, let's say a cylinder or a container, and you want to increase the pressure, the only way you can increase that pressure is by applying heat to that container. Because if you want to increase the pressure with keeping the volume constant, you need to make sure that the particles are going to have increased rate of collision at higher speed, right?
Yes sir.
So each individual collision should have a bigger momentum change, and there should be bigger number of collisions per second, which is basically an expression of pressure increase. So if you want to have that, you have to increase the average kinetic energy of the particles. So that is only possible by applying heat to the container, transferring heat to the container without allowing the volume of the gas to change, which means the temperature has to increase. At that temperature increase will essentially increase the kinetic energy, which will be increased, which can be comprehended as delta E, which is not illogical. Rafid, what I believe is it is supposed to be possible, but it cannot be on the syllabus. Then a reason I exactly jani na. I mean, math tells me that it should be possible for us to calculate the change of internal energy for the QR process, because we know the value of we have a constant value of P and we have a constant value of V. But why can we not why that formula is not introduced to us in our syllabus, I honestly don't know that answer. I have to look it up.
Okay, sir.
Oh, ভালো কথা. আমি তো ভুলে গেছিলাম. দেখো এটা যেন কে খুঁজে দিছে, রেসপন্ড করো তো। তোমাদের গ্রুপে কেউ না, এসে কেউ? This is not my scan. Someone help me find it from the internet.
স্যার সে কি ফ্রিতে কাচ্চি পাবে?
হ্যাঁ, I'll show. I'll prove it to you. I'll prove it to you. So I'm gonna share that link. How big is the PDF? I should see it.
আমি ছিলাম।
তোমার নাম বলো।
অপলা।
Yeah, Opola did that. So yeah, I want you guys to see the catch information. Opola, hold up and prepare to be amazed.
What, are you gonna show the chat? I was just joking.
I was not. This one, right? Is it you?
Yes, sir.
So, this is what happened. This is this. This is that book. I got this. And she said this. And I said this.
তাহলে আমরা এত বছর ধরে পড়তেছি, কোনো লাভ হলো না।
You can have occasional kachi. I mean, whenever you are invited or you get to know the first kachi khaite gese, let's crash his party. I mean, I'm never gonna tell you that cho. If you can crash my party successfully, you're always welcome.
This is like one of those game shows almost.
But she's gonna have, I mean, unlimited kachi on demand.
আমি জানতাম না, এটা আমি আসলে করতাম।
Well, I still didn't find the part 2. There are 2 volumes of it. This is only volume 1.
I'm on it.
So there is still chance for you, Sajid.
So is that a monthly কাচ্চি deal নাকি হচ্ছে যখন?
No. As long as I'm alive, as long as I can afford. If I have free kachi from me, okay. Well, if she wants to have, I mean, everyday kachi from me, I mean, that can be arranged, but I don't think that's gonna happen. Opola, তুমি কি পরিমাণ কাচ্চি খেতে পারো পার ডেতে?
স্যার একবার খাওয়ালেই হবে, অতবার আমি খাবো না।
No, I'm willing to. So, and I will definitely invite you. Remember to, I'll try and remember to invite you every single time I have a kachi fest.
Okay,
so,
sir.
Yeah. I'm really grateful. I mean, you don't know what you have done for me. You don't have any comprehension how much of a help that is. So I just let me find out how big is this PDF. This PDF happens to be 72 megabyte. So you're not going to be able to get that. So I'm gonna copy this link and give it to you in general so that এখানে তো লাভ নাই, হিন্দি লাভ আছে, হিন্দি লাভ নাই। বলো হিন্দি কেন লাভ নাই, বলো, জবাব দাও।
ফাইল সাইজ লিমিট।
ফাইল সাইজ লিমিট না, ওখানে লিংক দিলেও লাভ নাই, লিংকটা হারাই যাবে। লিংকটা যাতে হারায় না যায় ওই জন্য আমি এটা জায়গা মতো দিয়ে দিয়েছি। এই যে এখানে this is not a very high quality scan. I mean, when I was starting to scan the thermal part, I mean, I was getting better scan, but this is the entire book, so it's a very good thing. So for start,
Discord is there.
আচ্ছা আমি এখানে দিয়ে দিয়েছি ডিসকর্ড একটু তোমরা এটা ট্রান্সফার করে দাও। দাঁড়াও আমি লিংকটা হুবহু হয়ে যে ফেসবুক থেকে কোনো একটা লিংক কপি করলেই হয়েছে, মানে গোটা দুনিয়ার সবকিছু কপি হয়ে যায়। প্যারা, কি কপি করতে গিয়ে কি কপি করলাম। আমি কি কপি করতে চাইছিলাম?
drive link, sir.
Exactly. So I copied the drive link and it got me the whole FBID and blah blah blah. And we are done. Yes. Yes. So এখান থেকে তোমরা নামায় নিও এবং দরকার মতো পড়ে নিও। পার্ট 1 এ অনেকগুলো ভালো ভালো চ্যাপ্টার আছে যেটা আমাদের ইভেন্চুয়ালি লাগবে, আর পার্ট 2 তে এটুর কিছু চ্যাপ্টার আছে যেগুলো আমি করতেছি, তোমাদেরকে এভরি ওয়ান্স ইন আ হোয়াইল পিডিএফ বানাই দিব, সো নট টু ওয়ারি অ্যাবাউট দ্যাট। সো দ্যাটস দ্যাট। তোমরা যারা অপলার সাথে রেগুলার কাজ শিখাইতে যাও তার সাথে ভালো সম্পর্ক মেইনটেইন করবা। সো ইউ নো হোয়াট আই মিন।
স্যার তাহলে জিএইচ এর সবাইকে ইন করে নেন।
That depends upon how you treat with her. You have to tag with her to be included in the treat.
স্যার আমরা পেয়ে যাব, আমরা ওর বেস্ট ফ্রেন্ড।
Yes.
That's what you believe. Is that what she believes?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, exactly. In a public chat, you definitely do. I'm not trying to put prejudice in your heads. I'm just saying the facts that I think can be convoluted. Convolution is
like that.
Never mind. We'll go ahead with the thermal physics. So 21. এই যে বলতে বলতে 3/2 চলে আসছে, দেখছো কি চমৎকার। 21 পারছো? এগুলো তো সব সহজ কোশ্চেন।
স্যার 22 তে আছে প্রবলেম।
না 22 সহজ কোশ্চেন। 22
স্যার এখানে প্রবলেম আছে অনেকগুলো।
আমি এটা আলাপ করব আজকে, এই প্রবলেমটা আলাপ
স্যার 21 সি প্রবলেম ছিল।
আচ্ছা 21 সি আরেকদিন দেখাবো। শুনো, আমি এতক্ষণ যেগুলো আলাপ করলাম তোমরা এক্সাক্ট যে প্রবলেমগুলো আমাকে বলছো ওই কনসেপ্টগুলো ইউজ করে ওরকম অনেকগুলো প্রবলেম সলভ করতে পারবা। So you have some classes, you try the remaining problems on your own, you will find out that many of the problems will be automatically solved. So that I don't have to do. I want to talk about this question. এই কোশ্চেনটা সবাই একটু দেখো। এটা একটা ফালতু কোশ্চেন, মানে I am cautiously using this word. This is a ফালতু কোশ্চেন। না এখানে আমার পেন হারাই গেছে। পড়ো কোশ্চেন পড়ো। এটা কোনোভাবে এই ফরম্যাটে দেখা খুব ডিফিকাল্ট, মানে একটা প্যারা। এটা কি করা যায়? আচ্ছা এই বারটারে গায়েব করে দিই। হ্যাঁ কোশ্চেন পড়ছো? Or I could do one more thing.
Yes, sir.
That should be a bit more. Yes. Good. Now we have the whole question in one view. So we want to solve this question. Let's try and solve this question. Delta U equals to Q plus W. We know what is what, and the question is asking us complete figure 6.1. For each of the processes shown, write down the symbol plus for an I to increase, the symbol minus to indicate a decrease, and the symbol 0 for no change as appropriate. Okay, fine. We're gonna go for this. So এখানে আমাদের জিনিসটা বোঝা দরকার, সেটা হচ্ছে yes, যে the compression of an ideal gas at a constant temperature. So this is the first key that we have. If it is a constant temperature, then U should be 0. Use the internal energy change of the system. So delta U, so U is 0, constant temperature, ideal gas. So বুঝাচ্ছে? বলো মান, কথা বলো।
Yeah, sir.
Sir, internal energy is dependent on temperature.
For ideal gas, it's exclusively dependent on temperature. Half mc square equals to 3/2 kT. Or half mc square is proportional to T. Okay. So compression means what? Volume was decreased, so work had to be external force had to be used to squeeze the volume, so which means work was put in, work was done on the system, so W has to be plus, which brings us Q has to be minus, because this equals to this plus this. So this is pretty simple. এটা বুঝে গেছে কিনা দেখো।
Yes, sir.
মানে এখানে কম্প্রেস করলে আমরা এনার্জি কি থার্মাল এনার্জি ডিক্রিজ করতেছে স্যার, রাইট?
Because U is 0, that's why thermal energy decrease করতেছে. This was the final decision.
আচ্ছা মানে যেহেতু কনস্ট্যান্ট টেম্পারেচারে স্যার এটা
দুইটা কোয়ান্টিটি দুইটা অ্যামাউন্ট অফ জুল অ্যামাউন্ট কে অ্যাড করে আমাদের আলটিমেটলি 0 বানাইতে হবে. Now because the gas was compressed, so work done on the system had to be positive. So the other quantity had to be negative. That's the logic. এটা দেখো, heating of a solid with no expansion. Heating of a solid. So this has to be plus. Heating means what? Heat is in. No expansion means no volume change. So W has to be 0.
0.
This has to be plus.
Minus. Right? Oh, plus.
এই দুইটা কোনো সমস্যা নাই. This one is the crap. Read. The melting of ice at 0 degrees Celsius to give water at 0 degrees Celsius. Note, ice is less dense than water. What do you think should be your response?
Since the molecules is decreasing because ice
not molecules. You want to say the object volume, or you can say intermolecular space. Molecules don't decrease. Don't use that word.
Spacing between molecules decreases. So should work decrease?
Work should be positive. Ice is converting into water because they have given us this information. So whenever a certain volume of ice will convert into water, should it become smaller or bigger? That's the first thing I wanted to judge.
Smaller.
Hold on, সবাই চিন্তা করো. When certain amount of ice will become liquid water, should the water volume become smaller or bigger? Smaller. It means, now essentially this will have, we can assume that the atmosphere is squashing onto that ice cube and making it into water. So work is being done on the system because volume is becoming efficient. So the same logic over here, we should give a plus over here. That's essential. And this is a process of what?
Heating.
This is a process of melting.
So thermal energy added হবে plus.
So thermal energy had to be plus. And that should definitely increase the internal energy, not in terms of their kinetic energy because they are both 0, but because the particle has now become a bit more freed. So this has to be plus as well. So Q had to be plus because heat was absorbed into the system or heat got into the system. W is plus because the object becomes smaller in volume. If these two has to be plus, this has to be plus. Now let's have a look at the mark scheme, find out the problem. This blasted my head when I first came across this problem.
Sir, can you repeat the last part?
কিন্তু কেন
মানে ইউ পার্টটা ইউতে কি হচ্ছে?
ইয়া গেল কই আমার, এটা গেল কই? আচ্ছা এইটা ইকুয়ালস টু হচ্ছে এটা প্লাস এটা.
Yeah, so
if both of these are positive, this has to be positive. They are both increasing, so you have to increase that.
And that's it. আর কিছু না. There's no explanation.
Yeah, that's essentially what they are asking. They are asking us to give a plus.
মানে internal energy বাড়ছে তো, কারণ kinetic energyটা বাড়ছে।
না, kinetic energy বাড়ে নাই, ভুল, potential energy বাড়ছে। Both are 0 degrees Celsius, so kinetic energy should not increase.
Oh, sorry.
Sir,
kinetic energy is exclusively dependent on temperature. বলো।
স্যার ফার্স্ট রোতেই তো তাহলে আমরা সিস্টেমটাকে কুল করছি কারণ Q is negative.
No.
Sir, তাহলে?
Because U is considered to be 0, so system did not get cool, which means the particle had the same temperature. এটা মানে হচ্ছে এক্সটার্নাল সিস্টেম থেকে আমরা যতটুকু ওয়ার্ক তার ভিতরে ঢুকাইছি ততটুকু হিট আবার সিস্টেম থেকে বের হয়ে গেছে. The amount of work that was put in terms of into the system, exactly equal amount of heat energy was dissipated out. So let's say you put 100 joule in and 100 joule heat got out.
কম্প্রেস করেছি, সো একটা হিট সাপ্লাই হয়েছে কিন্তু মলিকিউলস লস্ট দ্য সেম অ্যামাউন্ট অফ হিট, এই কারণে জিরো।
হিট সাপ্লাই হয় নাই, নো, কম্প্রেস করার সময় ওয়ার্ক ঢুকছে এন্ড ওই ওয়ার্কটা হিট হিসেবে বের হয়ে গেছে।
আচ্ছা স্যার, বুঝছি।
বুঝে গেছে?
ইয়েস স্যার।
এন্ড মার্কস দেখি, মার্কস দেখে মাথা খারাপ করি। কোশ্চেন নাম্বার 24, দেখো কি করতে ইচ্ছা করে।
স্যার আমি জিরোই লিখছিলাম লাস্টেরটাতে।
Because you did not consider the effect of the bracket information. I mean,
Yes.
they didn't have to give the bracket information. Have a look, this was given in bracket. I mean, don't give us this. এটা যদি না থাকতো definitely সবাই এখানে জিরো লিখতো, right? They give us this information, then absolutely disregard this information's effect over here. What is that?
Sir, work actually done হচ্ছে, wait a second.
The volume is becoming smaller, then you figure it out.
Volume is becoming, it seems like it has to, work has to be done.
Why do you think it seems like?
Yes,
it's not that
volume
it's not that ice is apparently less dense. Ice is less dense than water.
Yeah, it is.
So if you have this much of an ice, water would be this much.
Yeah.
So volume decrease, which means external work is getting input into the system.
So Mars में zero দিয়ে রাখছে?
Yep. I have no explanation for this answer, and CA will not never again enter into discussion about the validity of the Mars.
No, this is like কি আজব.
This is like a planned trap, so that kids would never under in that paper.
This our plus seems more logical, right? In this case,
I would definitely say so, but I have no explanation that why would they give zero over here while they have already provided this information with this information. I mean, don't give us this information, then zero would be a logical answer. Duh. You give this information, then give zero over here. What happens? The kids do not get this mark ever.
Probably they wanted to carry out a survey of the students who actually read the question properly.
Yes, sir, I think so.
That is the most cruel way to do a survey.
Yeah.
Let me put it that way. Because believe me on this one, I mean, every year, কম করে হলেও 3 to 4% পোলাপান তো থাকে যারা এক মার্কের জন্য এ মিস করে, থাকে না?
অনেক থাকে স্যার।
কম করে হলো 3 to 4% পোলাপান তো থাকে যারা এক মার্কের জন্য এ মিস করে। তো ওই পোলাপানগুলো যদি এখানে এক মার্ক পাইতো, maybe they would have got that A. Think about those people.
Those people probably never checked the mark scheme out, so they will never know.
But they will have that kosto in their life, in their heart, in their brain, and their parents and their friends who are ungrateful of their service and efforts are gonna bitch about them through their entire life. 279 pesos. That's bad. Moving on. এই যে তোমরা বলছিলে না যে আমাদের ওই কনভার্সনের ফর্মুলাটা বোঝা লাগবে কিনা, this was a question where they actually brought about this idea of the horizontal and everything, and if you do understand how this formula came into existence, this question will be much better culpable for you, workable for you. So ওই জন্য কনসেপ্ট গুলো বোঝা দরকার। এখানে আর কমপ্লিকেটেড কোশ্চেন খুব বেশি কিছু নাই, বাকিগুলো তোমরা অ্যাটেম্প করলে পারার কথা। তোমরা একটু মাথা খাটায় কাজ করবা, মার্কস স্কিম এক্সাম ইনস্টিটিউট পড়বা, পড়ে আবার ক্রস চেক করবা যে বোঝা যাচ্ছে কিনা। গিভ সাম অ্যাডিশনাল টাইম, এন্ড তোমাদের সাথে এরপরে ক্লাস কবে?
স্যার
কালকে রাতে। হ্যাঁ,
Yes, sir.
কালকে রাতে। শোনো, শুক্রবার সকালে আমি একটু ঢাকার বাইরে যাব। I'll definitely be online, so I'll have communicated with the messenger. I am not entirely sure when I'll be back, but I hope it's not going to be more than 2-3 days. So once I'm back, we'll resume classes. বুঝা গেছে? কালকে ডেফিনেটলি ক্লাস হচ্ছে, বাট ফ্রাইডেতে আমি ঢাকা বাইরে যাব। কি বুঝলা?
ছুটি।
কালকে ছুটি না, কালকে ক্লাস হবে, ফ্রাইডেতে আমি ঢাকার বাইরে যাব।
সাবধানে যান।
থ্যাংক ইউ
স্যার। আমি একটা ওয়েবসাইট পাইছি, কিন্তু আমি পিডিএফ মানে নামানোর ভার্সনটা পাইতেছি না। মানে ওই ওয়েবসাইটে যে কেউ গেলে দেখতে পারবে, বাট মানে ইয়ে পাইতেছি না আর কি।
It's called Google Drive, যেখানে পুরা বইয়ের অর্ধেক খোবলা পার্ট দেওয়া আছে এবং ওই পিডিএফ গুলা পিডি বিষয়ে নামানোর জন্য স্পেশাল টাইপ অফ কোডিং জানতে হয়।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ
এই বইটা সব জায়গায় কিনতে হয়, they don't give it for free.
I will make it free. I'll scan up the entire book and I'll upload it. Believe me.
স্যার আমি আপনাকে একটা লিংক পাঠিয়ে দিচ্ছি, আপনি দেখেন।
ঠিক আছে, সমস্যা নেই। বলবান, থ্যাংক ইউ, গুড নাইট, আল্লাহ হাফেজ।
আসসালামু স্যার।
Allah Hafiz, sir. Stay safe.